you can give it a good 4 to 5 week thing, but it doesn't last on the tree. Like I said, you're spraying the tree to try to coat whatever insects are on there. So once again, once it's on the tree, insects can bore right through that, chew right through that oil, and they can ingest the oil if they want. It won't hurt them. Okay. The oil actually has to cover the insect, which is why neem oil doesn't really work on caterpillars and big insects, big bugs, because it's just fine. Coat me, I don't care. I'm still breathing. It's the small insects like scale insects, aphids.
They get fully submerged in it.
Exactly. They just get completely coated.
And also, what about propagating cuttings?
Oh, he has a call.
I mean, obviously you would want a healthy piece, because sometimes when you have to sacrifice a branch, you know, you'll have some healthy bits on there. How long should
And
they
now's
be?
the perfect time to do this. Let's say you take this branch off. You would take the last 2 years worth of growth. Here's last year's growth, and here's the year before that. Okay, and there's ways to tell, but you're gonna be doing your rooting in just the last tip ends of this. And what you do is, once you prune that off, see there's multiple circles right there. That's what tells me, and here's your multiple circles right here. There's last year's growth. From here to, where am I seeing it? Oh, from here to here, that might have been the year before if we had a really wet year. There's these circles of
We did
cells.
have a really wet year 2 years ago.
Yep, so it pushes out a lot of growth. This was last year's growth. And what you want is just the last few years. So what you're gonna do is, you're gonna take this whole stem and you're gonna bury all of these buds. Because see, right now this bud is getting signals. You're going to become a leaf. You're going to become a bud or a flower. You're not doing anything yet. But once this is underground, now the environment changes. Now I'm not out in the sun and I'm not drying out. I'm in the soil, I'm moist, and I got elements coming around me. The tree will automatically start to send whatever it can to that bud to say, you're now going to have to be a rooting bud. But that's why you put rooting hormones on those buds.
To encourage
You're helping the tree, because rooting hormones might be back here or somewhere else in the tree. The tree has to send it to these buds. So you're taking these buds and saying, we're going to coat you with the hormone your tree can't provide, get you in the soil, keep you moist, and what you're hoping for is, out of this multitude of 12 buds, 1 or 2 start to grow as root. And once you get them rooted, if you do it like right now, you take off all the flowers, take off all the leaves, get it in the soil, keep it moist with the rooting structure in it, and then once you get the roots established, take it out in the fall, put it where you want it.
Now, I have propagated other cuttings, not trees, but, you know,
Herbaceous plant.
yeah, and like tomatoes and things like that.
Yes.
In an aquaponic system.
Yes.
And so drop the roots, and then once those were established, transplant into the ground. Could you do the same thing with
Absolutely.
Because I noticed that they rooted out very quickly, where it could take 2 weeks, it was like 5 days.
And the reason hydroponics works on that really, really easily and well is because the hydroponics keeps the roots always moist, so they never dry out, but is always constantly in contact with some kind of nutrient or element or something that's going to stimulate cell division.
Right, and I did it with aquaponics, so I had the fish water going in there, and then it was on a bell siphon cycle, so it would fill and drain constantly.
Absolutely.
And I just didn't know if it would work with something big like this.
Well, I mean, I don't know each and every one. There are some trees they say root easier and some that don't. I would guess any fruit tree it's worth
the
a shot.
experiment. Exactly.
Absolutely, it's worth the shot. I mean, many times people would just take a cutting like that and just stick them in a pot with peat moss and water and just keep it wet. The key is, you don't want it necessarily in standing water that goes stagnant, because there's a lack of oxygen. The cells up here, the leaf cells, the cells that make up the leaves and the flowers and stuff, they don't need oxygen. In fact, the leaves will actually take in the ambient atmosphere, use obviously the CO2 to make the food. Well, that's what it puts the oxygen back out in the atmosphere. So the trees don't actually, some trees actually do convert some oxygen cells into oxygen we breathe. But for the most part, it's just taking in what's already here, using what it needs, and ejecting what it doesn't need. Roots need oxygen. They do not actually use CO2 because they're not exposed to the sunlight. So roots actually need oxygen for their cell division, not carbon dioxide.
And if there's no oxygen, they'll get root rot and then die off.
Exactly correct. So that's why the hydroponics works really well, because it's constantly moving, so the roots never get a chance to dry out, but they also get plenty of oxygen and plenty of elements. So I think that waterponics, hydroponics works really, really well for that kind of stuff. Yeah, if you got a system set up, have fun. You can really propagate these things, you betcha. The only issue with that, of course, is, well, okay, I've propagated this, it's got a root, but my tree's only this big. So by the time it gets to be food production, you're going to be my age.
Right.
I'm going to be long gone. So,
Can you
it
take
would take a
larger
while.
cuttings? Is that doable?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I would, like I said, if I were doing woody tissue cuttings, I would be trying it mostly with just a rooting hormone in like a peat moss or a potting mix and keep it moist.
Right.
Now, you want to try the hydroponics. I got to be honest, I don't have a whole lot of experience with it. I've read a lot about it, and I really like the idea.
It's pretty cool. You should try.
But what I really want to stress is that hydroponics basically is what we're doing with the roots in the soil. The water's washing all the elements off the soil particles, getting on the roots and taking those elements in a soluble form.
Right.
Now the tree can take it up. So that's basically hydroponics, just the soil is the medium for it to hold itself up.
So propagating from a little cutting like this will take many, many years to produce fruit. Is what
Yeah,
I
it would
heard you
take at
say.
least 7 or 8 years. Okay, and I'm just going by the guideline that if you germinate a fruit seed and the seed pops out, okay, like an avocado, you take your avocado, you stick it in the glass, now it puts roots out, now it starts to put a top out. From that point on, that first year it puts the top growth out. They say 7 to 8, maybe 10 years, depending on the tree, before it's mature enough to actually start producing
Wow.
fruit. Right. And it's simply a matter of the tree is using all its gathered resources
Right.
to
grow. Yeah.
I'm growing first, and I need to make more food before I can even start thinking about making reproduction organs.
Yeah, that's true.
And that's what it comes down to. It's got to be mature enough to be a reproducer, just like most animals. You got to have some maturity before you can actually physically reproduce, let alone emotionally reproduce.
Right.
We don't have to worry about that with trees.
Yeah.
But,
She's like, I can't emotionally handle these apples. It's too much.
but yeah, absolutely. I would recommend definitely. I mean, here you got a couple of challenges because these two guys are going together a lot. But here, once again, you take your choice. You say, okay, this tree is not much left, so I'm going to try to leave as much of this tree as I can. Or I'm going to take this guy out of the way, maybe just a portion of it. That guy's interfering, take it off here. Well, that's still interfering with that. We'll take it off here. This guy has space, this guy has space, and this guy has space. So they can intertwine and not hurt a thing. And like I said, all he would need is a step stool. Get him out. He's come out here and just one step up and he can reach everything. I would have to climb every tree just to get the part of it. But you have a lot of good low branches here. Yeah, a lot of good low branches. But, and if you wanted to do what I did over here, where you dig out the base of the tree, knock yourself out. I mean, go to town on it if you can. What we always want to see is we always want to see that trunk flare out like that. Because that way, if it goes straight in the ground like a pole, we don't know if there's roots wrapped around it. We don't know how far down that trunk flare is. And we don't know how far the roots are buried. And the further down you go in the soil, the less oxygen availability there is.
So would
Carry
you?
this. Who are you giving this to? You can carry that.
So would you think that one that you dug around a lot, is that salvageable if you move and make a bowl around to give it some oxygen?
That's it. Well, don't worry about that. Just leave the soil away from it. The way
Right.
you pulled it out.
Yeah.
Now, if you end up with a bowl going in towards the bottom of your tree because you pulled all the soil out, don't worry about that. Water's going to collect in there, but as long as it drains, you're good.
Okay.
The main thing is you don't want that soil up on the tree.
To hold it.
That will
Yeah.
stimulate more root growth. Yeah, I'm surprised to see this broke off.
That's sad.
It must have been last night.
But it just goes to show you that it was weak. I mean, this tree here is really probably pretty darn weak. It's just weak cells.
It is. It is so sad.
Well, they really be underneath here.
I would be so tempted to have propagate.
Well, see,
Oh, you probably
it looks
could.
to me like
Yeah.
this whole piece was wounded before. See, that's all dead tissue, and there's some callous wound tissue growing here.
Okay.
So how did that happen? Well, I look at it this way. These are laid out horizontal like this. Here, this is a great example. See it right there? This is sun scald. Okay. Now, sun scald happens like this. In like January and February, we have really warm days. The sun is beating directly on this woody tissue. Well, those cells in there get all warmed up, and they start expanding and moving water. And they start to expand and fill with water. Well, then, boom, overnight, 29 degrees. Well, that cell's like an ice cube, fractures.
Okay.
And then dead cells. But you'll notice it's not on the underside. And then the callus tissue starts to grow to close it up. Well, this one here had such a massive piece, the live wood couldn't hold all the weight. But you see it's still connected, wouldn't break off clean. You know, dead wood will break off clean. Live wood will always tear, which is another reason why if you cut like a large branch like this, always do an undercut. Because if you just top cut like this, it could rip all the way down like that.
Okay.
Just because of the way the cells are connected. You can see how they
Right.
So whenever I take a large branch off especially, undercut first, about a third of the way through, top cut, and then I finish off right here. Look, there's a wound that's already closed. There's a piece that was taken off, the wound's going to close over that. There's a dead piece here, but once again, it's simply a matter of there's some wounding here, but that's all. Here you go. There's your bore, Charles. Look how all this tissue right here was all eaten up and chewed up. But most times, the borers are secondary. They came in after the tree is already weak.
Right.
So when a woody plant is weak, and it evaporates, it takes water up from the soil, and of course it evaporates water and stuff out of its leaves. Well, when the tree is strong and healthy, that is a normal thing. I mean, it's just evaporating water out has quite a bit of oxygen in it. But when a plant is really weak, that gas is a heavier concentration of sugars and carbohydrates. So that's what signals bad insects. They're flying around looking at trees going, oh, there's one. Out of a whole forest, how do they find a tree like this? Well, they're all doing the same thing, but there's one right there that's a red flag. Many more sugars, many more alcohols. It's basically an alcohol. So as I had, who was a Dr. Hale at University of Tennessee said, all insects are like males. When a tree shows them more alcohol, it's going to bring them all in.
It's
all
like a
the
bar.
guys are coming, but it's all insects. And the funny thing is, he's the entomologist at UT. The funny thing is, most insects are almost all female. There's very few males in the insect families, in the insect groups. There's only like one male per hundreds of females. Usually, not all, but usually.
So with this insect, is that like a
Oh, he's just a creepy crawly.
Okay.
This guy here, he eats a lot of organic decaying matter under the soil. Makes good fishing, so I've been told. I don't get a chance to go fishing. But no, he's going to eat organic matter under the soil. He's just crawling up here to warm up.
Okay.
That's all he's doing. Just a little millipede guy.
Yeah.
No millipede. You call them roly-polies, millipedes. Make great bird food. The birds will get them if they can catch them. The bigger birds. But you go in the soil there, dude. There's probably your ant mound. You know, there's fire ants. Look at how active they are already. They're just warming up. Yep, so there's lots of ways to get rid of ant mounds. I found the most effective organic way is just boiling water. So that works. Just don't do any kind of petroleum product. I mean, I had an old guy say, oh yeah, I pour gasoline down the hole and then let
That was my grandfather. He did.
No, please don't do that. You poison the soil so bad. Well, one guy wanted to get rid of, and trust me, I'm at war with yellow jackets. I let most insects go. I don't care. Wasps, fine. I don't care. Bees, love them. But yellow jackets with a little tiny hole in the ground, you don't even see them until they're attacking you.
I'm with you on that.
There I'm at war.
Yeah, horrible.
But I will actually use the wasp spray. I just wait till nighttime. Know where their hole is, go at nighttime.
Empty the can.
Put the wasp spray right in the hole. Because it strictly is for the wasps. And it's not going to poison the soil.
Right, right.
But no, I know a guy that I'm pouring oil down that hole. Don't do that. No.
Yeah.
They actually make a natural one. It has a sweet smell to it. It works. It's better than anything you can get that's regular chemical.
Yeah.
I've used them side by side, and I'm telling you, I swear by that stuff.
What's it called?
I'll get Josette text you.
Okay.
the name of it.
It's worth shopping around because there's a lot more brand new organic controls, insect and pest controls out there that are pretty effective. The one biggest problem with most organic controls is they're only effective for so long until the population adapts to it.
Yeah, that's
But
true.
they'll adapt.
I don't think they'll adapt to it because it's sticky too.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, it takes.
But it may be generations and generations and years until they finally adapt. And they may never. I mean, that's just guesswork. Even the entomologists are just guessing.
Okay.
Stuff that I just sprinkle on it.
Okay.
And it's like food they take down into
Yes.
the property.
Okay. Yeah.
Amdro on my,
Yeah.
because we have so many fire ants.
Yeah, but Amdro, they have discovered there are many fire ants, especially south of us, total resistance to it.
Really?
Yep. And most of the ant baits are chemical based.
Because everybody's using it and then
Yeah,
they build up a
exactly.
resistance.
Well, what it does is it kills 90% of the population. Well, the 10%, they did not ingest
They move.
it. Well, they ingested the chemical,
Right.
they just didn't affect them.
Yeah.
As just as individual as me and him and him.
Yeah.
Some people are going to get it, some people ain't.
Yeah.
So Yeah,
Yeah, 'cause we-
once those populations start to breed, now they got a whole ant mound of resistance.
Yeah, we had a ton, and we finally started treating them, and now we don't really have any more. So.
And I've just read recently, I don't know if you're familiar with the hemlock woolly adelgid or the emerald ash borer. These are two important pests for big shade trees. Well, the one chemical they've been using is a systemic chemical called imidacloprid. Well, now it's been 5, 10 years, maybe 20 years of using that. Now they know that there are hemlock woolly adelgids that have complete resistance to this
Wow.
imidacloprid.
Yeah.
They can do it all they want. Doesn't affect the population at all.
Mm.
They just keep growing.
Wow. That's sad.
Yeah. But they come up with a new chemical.
Yeah.
You leave it to Monsanto or DuPont, they'll come up with a new chemical.
Exactly.
So, it's the way they make their money. And
Oh,
once
exactly.
again, I try not to use chemicals.
Yeah.
Because the natural world doesn't produce those
Right,
chemicals.
right.
But the natural world does produce enough chemicals to actually work. And that's where a lot of the organics are coming from, is they're researching and discovering what material does this tree develop to push that insect out. And they find out, and they'll figure it out. They're getting there. But I just think good cultural practices here, you're going to get your trees back in the shape. You'll get your trees back in the
Okay,
shape. But
cool.
don't waste your time on ones that aren't doing it. But I mean, here, even this
Yeah.
one I said it may not even be worth it because the large room. Well, you know what? It's alive.
It's got
It has
blooms.
fruiting buds, and I might be able to prune this one away from it, so it might be worth keeping at least for a year until you find out. See, you discover.
I just wanna know,
Look how different the bark is here and here
Yeah.
versus this.
Yes.
And what's going on with that? Well, that could be any one of a number of things. It could be just a matter of growth rate. It could be a canker or fungus spore got on that piece of wood. It could be any one of a number of things. But as long as it's alive and cell dividing, we're going to leave it alone. Usually that's the typical kind of damage you see like that right there when they're infested with mistletoe.
Oh, yeah.
And because the mistletoe mycelium gets inside there and makes the branch swell up. But I know, I mean, it's worth it. Hey,
I don't know.
maybe it won't last long, but if I get some fruit off of it this year,
Just cut it down.
keep it for a year or two. Can't hurt. But you'll see, obviously, in just another 2 weeks, you'll see which ones are completely gone. I'm guessing that little guy there, which looks like a cherry. Well, it's really hard to tell with cherries from completely. I think this guy's probably, oh yeah, look at all the fungus.
Oh, yeah.
Not only that,
Yeah.
you
Wow.
can't even, you move that in the ground, that's pretty much gone. That's
Yeah.
root rot. Yep.
And so that would probably come because it was buried too deep, possibly.
Could be that. Could more than likely, I think you dig this out, you'll find a root wrapped around it.
Okay.
Because it was buried too deep.
Okay.
But I mean, sometimes it's just a matter of the environment beats up on it. Drought of 2016, you follow that the following year with a bunch of sunstorms, damage. You're like, you know, for way out in the wilderness here, it's awful noisy out
I know.
It's quieter in my suburban neighborhood than it is out here with all these guys. But your flock with these turkeys,
Yeah. Guineas.
guineas, I'm sorry, guinea pigs. You're something else.
Yeah. They're good on the bugs.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, really?
Yep. And that, once again, that is a great, any birds that you can domesticate and keep around, they're one of the best insect controls you can have.
Good luck letting their babies live.
Yeah.
They're
If we can
the
catch
worst
'em.
at raising their own children.
If I could find their eggs, then I'll
They're
incubate
terrible
them.
mothers. That
You
if
mean
you
the guinea?
Ah,
Really?
they're the worst. I don't even know. I mean, seriously, I don't even know how they're still